Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-host Tayte in the hour, and today we're reviewing Jon Favreau's latest live-action Disney remake of The Jungle Book. First off, it's been quite a while since we've done one of these. I'm actually sort of having to get back in the swing of things. I mean, I know I've been doing my reactions and stuff, but
you mean we run a podcast? What is this?
I know, right? So apologies to our viewers if you have been missing the reviews, but hopefully now with this one, and then next week we've got Captain America, we can get back on track with them, get them out more regularly. So I saw this one like last weekend, and I've sort of been sitting on it waiting for you guys to watch it. George was meant to be on this one too, but unfortunately he can't see it till Sunday, so me and you just jumping on for this one. And I didn't actually know that you were a fan of the original animated one too, so this is definitely going to be an interesting discussion because it's one of my favourites. Oh,
no,
wait.
I'm not a fan of this. George is a fan of this.
Ooh,
I think.
Civil War.
Civil War. Personally, from the original, I think it was probably the most forgettable of the Disney classics.
Oh. There's a sharp pang in my heart there.
Pretty
Which could
savage.
be a heart attack, but...
Pretty savage, but let's just say I preferred Tarzan.
Tarzan is great. That was definitely in the era that I was watching Disney, but no, I'm looking at my shelf now. I've got Jungle Book on DVD, and I still have my original VHS copy of all my Disney films, and Jungle Book's right up there on the top shelf.
As far as Disney films set in a jungle-like setting, I've always got to go Tarzan.
Well, Tarzan had Phil Collins, which is great. I'm a huge Phil Collins fan. I'm like Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. He's fantastic. But no, I had a small collection of Disney films growing up. Sort of as the years went by, I tended to try to get the whole set if I could. But Jungle Book, I don't really have a first memory of watching it. It sort of was just always there. And I absolutely love it. I still love it. The music's fantastic. I'm going to fight you on that claim you made where you say it's not memorable. I think it's still very memorable. And
is that because you've just had a reminder with this film?
No. I mean, I've always been a Disney fan. I mean, Disney's my life's blood, as well as Star Wars, which I guess is still Disney now. So just Disney
and Marvel,
in general,
which is also
and Marvel,
Disney.
Yeah. So Disney has always been my life's blood, really. And going into this, I want to talk about my cinema going experience before we actually get into this film. Sorry, viewers, but you're going to hear me rant here. Okay, so as I said, I went on Saturday, and unfortunately we made the decision of going Saturday evening. And we got there late. We got there about 5 minutes before the movie was actually starting, so we didn't really have time to get decent seats and do all that. We got there and the queue was out the door. So the film was very nearly pretty much started when we actually sat down, and the only available seats were two of the end seats. It's the seats that no one wants to sit in. It's like the ones that are about 2 rows away from the front.
Oh,
you're on an angle. Your neck is craned.
That sounds like my
Deadpool
horrible experience.
Yeah, your neck's like craned in this horrible neck-breaking position, and I just turned to my mate and I was like, I can't sit here. We need to find somewhere else. Now, the only other two were like 2 rows back from that. And we were surrounded, unsurprisingly, by families and kids who would not shut the hell up all the way through this movie. Coupled with that, the actual movie itself was very, very low volume for a cinema-going experience, to the point where I was having to lean forward in my seat to try and hear the movie better. Like, that's going to do anything because the speakers are, either side of the actual room. And just kids were just yelling animal names out. I'm going to get into it later, but Shere Khan's first appearance had a kid absolutely bawling and screaming the place down. And like anyone should take the kid out and let them calm down. The mother kept him in there for what seemed like 5 minutes of constant crying. So I was in a bad mood pretty much from the get-go with this thing. I don't like crowded cinema-going experiences unless it's a big event movie, like your Marvel films, because everyone there's a fan. But usually they're going to shut the hell up throughout the whole movie, This one wasn't the case of that, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think with audiences with this one, and I guess this goes for me as well, you're going to have 2 very different audiences in this. You're going to have sort of people going, like casual fans just going to see this fun family film, and then you're going to have the people that did grow up with the original one and sort of wanting to see what they're going to do with the live action setting. And that was sort of the audience that I was going in for me personally. I've been on record before and said that I really dislike the idea of Disney doing all these live-action remakes. I think it takes away from the magic of the original animated one.
Yeah.
And I think that the animated ones are still so good that you could just show a kid those now and they'd be, fantastic. They'd still have the same reaction. But this one was kind of an exception. Like, trailers were coming out for this thing. We were seeing what we were doing with it visually, and we're going to talk about the effects later. And it definitely got my interest because I was just thinking sort of the look of it with the jungle and the ruins and the animals. I think this one was definitely a lot more interesting than perhaps Maleficent or Cinderella.
I'm going to sound like a real downer here and say all of the advertising, all of it, I wasn't too impressed with. And I'm also a massive fan of the animated originals, not maybe this film as an animated original, but I would have preferred for it to just stay as an animated film before watching it. I was kind of in two minds to watch it. I mean, I was messaging you people from the podcast just beforehand saying, I don't really need to see the film, do I? I could just watch the original and it will be the same. But we'll go into that in a bit later. My cinema going experience was fine, by the way. Perfectly fine.
Well, yours was empty, so of course it was.
Well, it wasn't exactly empty, but I went during school hours. Therefore, it was just me and a bunch of old people. And they were cool.
Right.
They were chill.
Probably still alive when the original came out.
But yeah, when I was looking at the effects going into it, like, from the trailers, the only things that really impressed me was kind of something that's come forward a lot in animation, not animation, but effects recently, was the fur and the way that the fur acted, and wind and fur. And I feel like that was good, that was useful, but I felt like all the way through watching the trailer and stuff like that, the voices did not sync up with the animals' actions.
Yeah,
and that's probably because it's completely unnatural. And
the most notable one for that for me, because some of them, the likes of Ben Kingsley and Idris Elba, I thought they completely matched the character.
Yeah,
for
they
me,
did, yeah.
The standout one was Scarlett Johansson. And I guess kind of Christopher Walken as well, but that's just because I know it's Christopher Walken.
Yeah, well, maybe it would have been better if they didn't have such iconic names attached to those characters. One of the main examples for that is Bill Murray's Baloo. It was wrong watching it, because I had Bill Murray in my head. I don't know why, but at the time in my head I had him wearing his Ghostbusters outfit. And then all I'm seeing on screen is this bear, and the voices just do not match up. It just made no sense to me.
You just want Baloo appearing at the end just going, "We came, we saw, we kicked its ass." No, I completely agree with that as well. And with these live action ones, though, I don't know if in the past if they've got huge A-listers. I mean, Maleficent had Angelina Jolie. But besides that, I'm not really thinking of anyone. But this one is the first one that's really had that big voice acting push to it. There was some voice acting that I thought worked absolutely fantastic. I loved Lupita Nyong'o's character, the Mother Wolf. I'm trying to see what she was called. Not Arkayla, that was the guy wolf. Oh, there we go, Raksha. The Mother Wolf. I thought she was fantastic. There was a lot of emotion in there. There was a TV spot clip that came out of the scene where... Well, actually, it's probably spoiler. Well, if everyone's seen the Disney one, you know how the story goes pretty much. But it's when Mowgli is saying bye to her when he's going to go off into the jungle on his own when he has to leave. And that was very touching. There are some scenes that are great like that with the voice acting. But, I will completely agree with that some voices in particular didn't match, and I think that might be down to the hyper-realistic graphics of the animals. We know that the Andy Serkis Jungle Book movie, Jungle Book Origins I think it's called, was actually meant to be coming out next year. That's more based on the Rudyard Kipling book, so that's going to be very incredibly dark.
I've read the book, I liked the book. So... I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what he can do with that. And that was meant to be coming out next year, but I think they've pushed it back a year, probably to distance it from this one, because two Jungle Book movies a year apart would be kind of weird. But with the effects in this one now, and we'll talk about the effects a bit now, these are some of the best special effects I think I've ever seen in a movie. It truly is a visual feast for the eyes all the way through.
Disney have always been great rendering animals. I'm remembering back to, I think it was 2005, was it? The first Chronicles of Narnia movie, Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe. And Aslan looked phenomenal. And it just shows how far they've come with these years. You see Mowgli, and I want to talk a bit about the actor, Neel Sethi, I think he's called. Yeah. He's your typical kid actor in that I wanted to just sterilize the human race after seeing this kid in this film. I thought he was really irritating, but hats off to him, because there are much older actors that struggle with this, reacting to completely just CGI characters, just nothing there, green screens everywhere. And I think this film is pretty much filmed entirely on a green screen. So for him to get these kind of reactions, it's kind of incredible. Yeah.
I'm just trying to find, because I did have an actor in mind who I thought, oh yeah, they could have done a good job of it. I'm just trying to find him. It was
As in the character of Mowgli?
The character of Mowgli, yes, because I had an actor in mind when they said, oh, it's going to be a live-action version of The Jungle Book. I was like, oh, no way, I have an idea for someone who would be amazing for that role. I'm just trying to find out their name now.
Shall I carry on then?
Yeah, go for it.
Talk about stuff. So, yeah, and now what's my biggest concern now with Andy Serkis's ones? I mean, Andy Serkis is a guy I want to see do really, really well. I mean, he was a guy who was just sort of brought on in Lord of the Rings 2 Towers, thrown into like a weird scuba diving outfit with like all cameras over it, and it was still very much in its infancy of motion capture. And then since then he's worked as second unit director on the Hobbit movies, and now he's directing his own one. But going into this one, before I saw the trailers, I thought, oh, this Disney live-action version is going to be the fun, light-hearted, sing-along Disney one that we grew up with the animated one, and then Andy Serkis's one will be just the dark, realistic-looking animals, and you kind of do get that with this one. And now I'm kind of worried with Andy Serkis's one in that the animals really won't look all that different, I don't think. And so in terms of effects, if this doesn't win the Oscar for Best Visual Effects at this year's next year's Oscars, I guess, then something is vastly wrong. I know there's a lot more films to come out this year. We've got Star Wars Rogue One in December, for example, but I do think that visually this was one of the biggest draws for me. There are some films that come out where I just see the trailers and think, I want to see that purely based on the effects. And usually that's against my sort of my mantra with films that don't just get suckered in by the eye candy, but this one is one I wanted to see how creative they could get with it.
I don't know. I don't know. There may be other films that go for visual effects which may be better. There is always one.
Totally. But I definitely do think this deserves a nomination because it is quite incredible with what they can do with this.
So my pick would have been Tony Revolori, the small kid from the Grand Budapest Hotel who played Zero.
Wouldn't he a bit too old for the role now?
No, that's what I'm thinking now, possibly. I mean, he is 19, I believe. But, I mean, in Grand Budapest, he looked quite young. He looked like a 10-year-old. So, he would be a dealable actor in that film, I would say.
I don't know if you remember this, but in the 90s, I think it was, there was a live-action version of The Jungle Book.
I do not remember
the poster very vividly. It was Mowgli sort of standing on a tree, and I think it used real-life animals in it, and I don't think the animals actually talked. I didn't like it growing up because in the 90s I had the Disney one, and that was the fun one. That was the one with the songs, and I never really watched the live-action one. And in that, I think they go with a much older Mowgli. I think he's in his 20s or late 20s, something like that. I think he's pretty much a fully just grown man in it. So they could have done that with this, but I think they wanted to keep it in spirit of the other one. And let's talk about that a bit, the spirit of the original. Because one of my concerns going into this one, and I sort of hit on this with the Andy Serkis comments I was making, I was worried there would be a tonal clash with this movie. Because there were some bits that looked very, very dark and, serious, mature, trying to take itself seriously, and then you get shots in the trailer of Mowgli on Baloo's belly coursing down the river whistling bare necessities, and from the trailer I was thinking, these two don't mesh. They really don't, and I was hoping that would have been smoothed out in the movie.
The pacing in this film is a problem.
Yeah.
Do you
want to talk about that a bit more?
I think that's where you're trying to get to in the end, but it was fast, action, fast. very, very slow, happy, jolly, very, very dark, not very happy, not very jolly. Oh, it's going to be happy again. Oh, no, we're going dark again, dark action. It was all over the place. Absolutely all over the place. That wasn't so much
the pacing for me, it was mostly just the tone. I didn't know where I stood with this movie.
The tone and the pacing, because some scenes felt rushed. I know that in the original there was a lot of different... It was basically him going through all the different characters and meeting all the different characters.
Yeah, it was really episodic in nature.
However, this film somehow removed some of those elements and yet also still felt just as rushed as the original.
Yeah. Well, we've got to think as well that this live-action version, it has to pad the film out to get it to a decent running time. I think this was just, just under 2 hours, I think.
How long was the original? Let's have a look.
The original, I've got Wikipedia up, it says 78 minutes.
This one's 1 hour 45, and it feels even more rushed.
But, I guess there were scenes where you could feel the padding, and this is the spoiler-free section, so I won't give anything away, but there are certain things they do with Mowgli's backstory which fleshes that out a little bit more. And then there's some wacky hijinks with Baloo that wasn't in the original and things like that, and that was the biggest problem for me. And I know this has got to stand on its own, but as Disney's The Jungle Book, a live-action remake of their own animated film,
they didn't stick to it.
Yeah, exactly. I did find myself keep going, well, that's not how the original did it, and I know that that's not the attitude you should have, but or things like that are very incredibly difficult for me to do. Yeah. I can't distance myself from the original because the original is a big part of my childhood, and I'm sure it's a big part of loads of other people's childhoods as well.
Yeah.
And when you see a live action version coming out, part of you just kind of wants to see the same thing just done in live action, and that's the kind of attitude I was going into this with. So I'm not really sure if I'm the right guy to review this movie because it was very difficult for me to distance my feelings and my own personal bias to the original with this new one. So I wanted to kind of get your opinion on it more because you said you weren't really a fan of the original Disney one all that much. So did you go into this with much fresher eyes and just sit down and go, let's see what this live action version one does, and you didn't really care for the changes and you just wanted to see what they did with it?
I had a brief look over on the original film, took in the key points, okay, so that's the film, got it, I remember the film now, okay, go in and see how well it matches up, and I'm gonna safely say, without spoiling anything, there was some scenes where it didn't match up at all, and in my head I had the idea of, it's the Jungle Book, he goes off an adventure, he goes to see all these different animals and characters, and this doesn't spoil anything, but there were cuts made to this film, and yet it's a longer running time, and at the moment I still can't get it through my head that it was a longer running time, and they still cut things out. True, they did introduce new things in there, however, I feel like this film was maybe rushed because possibly they were thinking, okay, so they got Andy Serkis bringing his film out, they need to get theirs out as soon as possible.
Yeah, I definitely think that was a big part of it as well.
And I feel like they left out key points and they introduced some things in just to kind of sidestep those key points just so it kept on that track. And I actually sent you a message immediately after me getting out the cinema, didn't I, Chris? I said, Chris, you'll understand this question, but I'm not sure if I just watched The Jungle Book or not.
Yeah. No, and absolutely, and that's kind of how I felt about it as well. I didn't hate this. I guess we can get into positives.
No, I didn't hate this film at all. That's not what I'm saying. I didn't hate the original, but I feel like the original was slightly forgettable and wasn't one of my favourites. And this will go down as maybe a little bit more rememberable, but still not one of my favourites again. As far as the live action movies go, I believe the next live action Disney film, would that be Alice Through the Looking Glass? Is that Disney?
I guess that's loosely based on it because I think that was in the time where they were just doing a live action version of Alice in Wonderland the book rather than the actual original Disney movie.
So the next one would be Beauty and the Beast then, yes?
Beauty and the Beast I think is the next one.
And then Dumbo.
That one I'm actually looking forward to.
I'm looking forward to Beauty and the Beast because I can see that working. There's a lot less animal interactions. I know you got the beast itself, but I reckon you could pull that off with the CGI we have nowadays. Yeah. I can't see Dumbo working.
And apparently Tim Burton is meant to be directing Dumbo,
Oh,
so expect
hell no.
washed out, desaturated, grim, macabre Dumbo.
Hell no.
Can you wait for the pink elephant scene though? What he's going to do with that?
Oh, that will be good. That will be trippy as long as he gets it right.
But my biggest question I'm going to have with it is, and I'm going to sound really bad right now, I really want the horrible, stereotypical racist crows to be in there because I loved those guys as a kid. They were fantastic. They were my favourite characters in that movie. They get the song in it as well when I see an elephant fly, but I don't know. Clearly it's just... This is like printing money for Disney, right? I mean, they're taking their own movies, just recreating them in live action and just throwing them out there again. They're banking on the love that people have for their original movies, and they're all going to go and see this one. And people have all gone to see this one. Currently, the box office stands at $351.7 million. That's insane. And the marketing as well. I listen to the radio quite a lot. There are like 2 adverts for this movie in every single ad break. The marketing for this was everywhere, so God knows how much Disney forked out on
Disney
that.
marketing, isn't it?
Yeah. Just cram it down everyone's throat so they go and see the movie, and I went to see the movie. So positives and negatives before we round out for our spoiler free, then we're going to get into some spoilers. We can get more into the nitty gritty of the story there. Positives for me kind of is the effects and you know what, kind of Jon Favreau's direction as well. I mean, this was the guy who sort of springboarded the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? I mean, he directed the original 2 Iron Man films. Say what you want about Iron Man 2, but the first Iron Man was what put Robert Downey Jr. back on the map and is what sort of the foundation, the cornerstone of where we are now with the Marvel films. So clearly Disney trusted this guy, brought him back, and just how he's worked with so many green screens and probably green tennis balls and stuff for characters to work with, and the voice acting and everything like that. I did think that the directing in this film was great, and positives for me is just sort of the effects, and a shout out to my boy Idris Elba, who does the voice of Shere Khan. He was fantastic.
He was good.
He was very, very different from the original. The original voice actor for Shere Khan was George Sanders, and he played it as a very foppish, very English, arrogant. He was kind of like the character of Smaug. He was very boastful about himself and how amazing he was. This one was just intense and scary. They do something very different as well. The original... I'm always going to keep comparing it, but the original started off the movie where they're just talking about Shere Khan. Shere Khan doesn't start in this movie. He doesn't appear in like the first 10 minutes. He appears very late into the movie, like 3/4 of the way through. But everyone's talking of how bad Shere Khan is. Then when you finally get to him, it's the amazing reveal. This one, he's pretty much in it from the start, but that's not so much a bad thing because Idris Elba just plays it so well. And in fact, some of my favourite scenes in this movie are more or less
Shere
all
Khan,
down to his voice acting. Negatives...
no faults there.
No,
most of the voice actors.
Negatives for me, it's... I just don't think it really had much of the charm or magic of the original one. And I think that's partially for me down to the tonal clash of it. You get the very serious and intense scenes, like the Stampede sequence, for example, that you see in the trailer. And then you get, or even like King Louie in it, Christopher Walken's King Louie, who's very kept in the shadows and intense and imposing. And then he starts going into King of the Swingers, which kind of comes out of nowhere, and it doesn't feel like it meshes with the tone. So if I was going to give a negative, that would probably be it for me. So positives, negatives for you, and then we'll move into spoilers.
Positives, I would say, would be... the visuals look nice.
Yeah. You were struggling to think of anything there, weren't you?
Oh, no. It was quite a nice end credit sequence. I won't spoil what was in the end credit sequence, but it was really well done.
Very creative. Very creative.
Negatives. Should I make a list, or should I go with the most negative thing?
Just go for most negative thing now, and then we can sort of go into it more with spoilers, I guess.
The most negative thing about this film was it wasn't needed.
Yeah. Wow. Full stop after that. Boom. Mic drop. Yeah, but you know what? Disney need it, right? Because they need more money, because Disney are poor and impoverished and need your dollar
bills. It just wasn't needed as a film.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you there. It did have potential, and I do think that the potential did shine through in some scenes, but I don't think it works as a whole. That it's not a bad movie. I may seem very down on this movie. I didn't hate this movie. It just wasn't memorable to me, and I think it lost a lot of the charm that the original had. And there were moments I was kind of watching this one going, you know what? I could be at home right now watching the original Disney animated one in half the time as well. But yeah, so that'll do it for our spoiler-free section. We're going to get into spoilers now, talk about more of the key scenes and scenes we liked, scenes we didn't like, that because we don't want to give anything away in the spoiler-free. Let's get into spoilers. So, Tate, what do you want to hit on first?
Let's start with my favourite moment, the end credit sequence, because that was beautifully animated. Jesus. That was incredible. It's sort
of like a pop-up book style. I was expecting an after-credits scene where, well, earlier in the film, King Louis just gets, like, fucking crushed by the whole temple, and the monkeys are trying to dig him out, but you never know if they find him or not, so I guess with that bit in the book, we're meant to infer that he did right, because he sort of, like, bursts out. Yeah, I love that. I don't think I've seen that in a movie before, like a kind of pop-up book style ending. It was
so
really
good.
Quite nice.
That was really nice. That was well done and animated. They could have started with that or something like that, or definitely ending it with that was the right decision, but they could have done something else with that, you know?
Well, I'm going to sort of bookend your favourite moment with that and say that one of my favourite moments was the very, very beginning. I don't know if this is a new Disney intro logo.
That was weird.
Yeah, right?
What was that? It was just like, that is not the Disney castle. Am I watching a Jungle Book film, or am I watching like someone's attempt at a Jungle Book film?
Yeah. I mean, Disney have gone through loads of different logos. I mean, back in the 90s, for me, it was just the blue screen with the silhouette of the castle and, like, the little comet thing, the shooting star goes over it. Then recently, they've done the really super high-vis one with the landscape and the breathtaking castle. This one started off, and I was like, oh, have Disney changed it now? Is this the new incarnation of it? Is this just used for the live-action remakes of their original ones? But I think it was done sort of in that pop-up book style, I guess, when you sort of get to the ending and you watch it, but it plays that original opening music of the Jungle Book, and although I was trying to blank out the audience who were pretty much talking for the whole entire 10 minutes of the intro of this movie, that was really nice, and that sort of just brought me straight into this world again. It was great to see, had the huge beaming grin on my face. What other things can I talk about? Okay, I'm going to sort of be all over the place with this, but I want to talk about King Louis some more. Okay,
He was definitely the king of the monkeys, let's just say that.
He was the kingest of Kongest of the apes.
He was the king of Kongest of the apes, indeed.
He was huge, and I guess with, like, King Louis, they wanted to make him they wanted someone for, like, Mowgli to look up to, basically, just have this immense mass of primate. But he was just a smidgen too goddamn big for me to take him seriously. You see him stomping around the courtyard, and the guy looks just fucking massive, and it's just like, you know that orangutans don't grow to that size. You know they can get big, but not to this scale.
It was a bit over the top, I feel. Because I feel like they needed an imposing character to kind of shadow over the characters at that point, and they just didn't.
Yeah, and, you know, they lead him into the temple. And this was one thing that got me as well, how some of the animals can talk, but some can't. For example, like, you've got the elephants in the original, the sort of like British military that goes stomping and marching through the jungle. Yeah. In this, I don't think the elephants actually talk. They're sort of bigged up with this big exposition and history of them, that they created the jungle and they're to be respected, and they never talk. And sort of with King Louis as well, with, like, the monkeys, they have that scat off, I guess, in the original one, where they're singing along with him during the song, or, like, playing instruments and things. Really don't get it in this. They're played very realistic with this. And then you get King Louis, played by Christopher Walken, and I guess it was a good performance, but it's sort of going back to your earlier point where you said that the voice acting really does sort of take you out of the movie, because you just see as them. And you know what? I guess they did this with motion capture, but even King Louis kind of does look a little bit like Christopher Walken in the face, and definitely the eyes.
Did they use any form of mocap, or is it? They probably molded it off each other's faces. I reckon they would have looked at his face and gone, oh yeah, that's what he looks like.
Yeah, definitely for King Louis, I think they did that. I'm not sure about everyone else, but yeah. So Mowgli is led to this temple. It's very imposing. It's very dark. It's very quite mature for a Disney movie. And then you hear the music chime up, and you know it's coming because earlier in the film they did Bare Necessities, although I would say it was an excerpt from Bare Necessities. It wasn't the whole musical number, and it was kind of downplayed where it was just a song that was going around in Baloo's head, and he just liked to sing it every now and then. This one just turns into like full-on musical number, and they add new verses in, new lyrics. They kind of do away with the whole jazz aesthetic of it, and I guess that's because in the original, the voice actor of Baloo was Phil Harris, who was a jazz musician, jazz singer, and Louis Prima, of course, one of the best jazz singers of all time. So that's why they kind of went with that angle. With this one, they kind of don't. But it's very, very straight, and it did kind of take me out of the movie. Like, you're expecting it, you know it's coming, and if it wasn't in the movie, everyone would be complaining as to why it was cut. But it's that tonal shift again. We get like a big song and dance number that to me didn't fit. And I was watching it and I was half expecting, I was like, is Baloo gonna like walk in drag in a minute and have a dance off with King Louis like in the original? That's one of my favourite bits of the original, but it's safe to say that didn't happen in this one. So was that kind of jarring for you with the songs and things like that?
You either make it a full-on musical, do all of the songs, that means every single last song, or you go with the darker tone, which the film just couldn't decide what it wanted to do. It had a dark tone and had light musical numbers. What is that?
Yeah, it doesn't fit. It's kind of going back to like the first Hobbit movie, right? I mean, sort of structurally with the story, It's very, very similar. It's very episodic. It's very encounter-based. And it's sort of what Peter Jackson failed to do with the first one, how he had the singing and the dancing in it, and then he'd have very intense scenes of battles and beheadings and stuff, and just tonally it didn't match, and that's kind of what I got with this one. And you talk about dark scenes as well. Scarlett Johansson as Car, the introduction to that.
That was good.
It was good. I love that. You mentioned it earlier, but I think before we hit record, but her rendition of Trust in Me is fantastic. And
sadly, they did it after the end credits, though.
Yes, I know.
I mean, Scarlett Johansson, she's sang in films before, hasn't she? She sing in Her?
She sang in films before.
Did she sing in Her? Wait a sec.
I think she sings a little bit, right? I think like she just singing through the microphone. But she is actually a singer, kind of, as well as an actor. And I say kind of. I've listened to a little bit of her album. It's kind of god awful in every way, I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
But I can see what they were trying to do with her voice. I mean, in the original, Car is a guy, but I'm not gonna like get on a high horse or anything and saying like, oh my god, why have they cast a woman in the role of Car? They were going for the sultry, hypnotic voice, and I mean the character of Car is a hypnotist basically, and they do that in this film, and the effect on that looked fantastic on the eyes. But she's kind of wasted. She sort of shows up one scene in this movie, Baloo shows up, and then she's out of the movie. Car sort of cropped up a lot of times in the original film, and he was sort of the informant that sort of rats Mowgli out to Shere Khan in the end of the original movie. In this, it was sort of, well, Car was in the original movie, let's get Car in this one. But no, I did like the song. I could see what they were doing with the voice, but it's what I said, and this was the biggest offender of that. It was just Scarlett Johansson. She wasn't playing a character of me. She's like, the stake showed up and I was like, oh look, it's Scarlett Johansson. There's not really a whole lot else I can talk about this film. Really only like the story embellishments. So we get a lot more insight into Mowgli's backstory of how his dad was killed. I don't quite know why he left the man village.
Did they use the phrase "the red flower" in the original?
Yes. Once, I think it's in the King of the Swingers song. But what's hilarious is, and I think this is in the original as well, they do use the word fire in the same song.
Yeah.
So, and I'm gonna use something that Brad Jones, another review on the internet who does Midnight Screening, says. He's like, wow, they don't know the word for fire, but they know the word propaganda, It's like that's a good point. But no, I like the stuff they do with Mowgli's backstory in this, although, again, as I just said, I question why the dad was leaving the man village. I can't really remember the reason they said. And also, why all the animals know this. Like, Bagheera clearly knows it because he was in the area, and we get that really nice scene where sort of toddler Mowgli approaches Bagheera, and he's seen what's going on. But I like, how does Kaa know? Yeah. Is it just jungle gossip? Is it spread between all the animals? But we knew we were going to get embellishments. For example, the stampede sequence is not in the original, but was pretty cool to see, although I think it was pretty much just a CGI test to see if they will ever get to a live action version of Lion King, because I was getting huge Lion King vibes from that scene.
No.
It's gonna happen, man. It's gonna happen. I know. But that's the thing, right? Because with this one, you've at least got one human character in it as your reference, so you can do a live action. Lion King is just all animals. Now, we know they can do animals, but would that work? I think that would just be an abomination if they ever did a live action version of Lion King, in my opinion.
They shouldn't. They really shouldn't.
No, but I was just watching that stampede. I was like, they could probably do the stampede sequence with like Simba running through this and like Mufasa clinging onto the walls. I know I'm sort of jumping around all over the place on this one. They changed the ending as well. That was another big thing for me. So you have Mowgli setting the entire jungle on fire, which was kind of hilarious. I mean, if you're going to do a strategy to get rid of Shere Khan...
Hold on. He set the entire jungle on fire, and then for some strange reason, everyone was okay with it.
Yeah. I know, right? Well, they kind of have that moment where Shere Khan's...
This film is sending out some really weird messages to me. First of all, it's supporting forest fires.
Yeah, I guess so.
Secondly, it's supporting, like, what's it called? Like, it's saying, you can trust panthers, but you can't trust tigers. Like,
tigers, man.
I'm pretty sure that people living in Cincinnati would be pissed off with that, which is a sports joke if anyone gets it. But it was throwing off some really weird mixed messages, that's all I'm saying.
It's just at the moment where Bengal tiger numbers are improving in the wild, and now they're saying that all tigers are bad. No, I kind of get that, but it's all okay, right? Because there's just going to be like a herd of elephants that are going to like dam up the river and just flood the jungle and just put everything out conveniently in the last minute. But no, they kind of do have that moment where Mowgli's set everything on fire and he just turns around like, oh shit.
Here's how I would have ended the film. I wouldn't have them flood back the forest. What I'd do was I would have them block up the dam, and then the you'd see this peace treaty stone thing kind of begin to appear again, and they all sit there watching the forest burn and wondering what their future holds, because that fits with the dark tone of the film.
And then I want to see the sequel where all the animals want to get revenge on the man village and just stampede through it and just murder everyone.
R-rated, the Jungle Book.
In fact, isn't that in the original book? Don't the elephants stampede through the village?
I think...
I swear to God that happens.
I'll have to read back through the original book.
If anyone has read the original Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling, please drop us a comment and let us know if that happens. I swear I heard that somewhere. But as well as that, with the end... Oh, by the way, going back to that fire bit, they big up the whole thing that Shere Khan is terrified of fire, yet runs into a flaming jungle to fight Mowgli, which is very cool visually. It was fantastic how they did that, and it's definitely a lot grander scale than their fight in the original film. I've been using the phrase original film so much in this. I need to think of like a different way of phrasing that. But... yeah, it's much more impressive, much more cinematic what they do with it, but it does kind of go against this whole thing of why he's scared of man in the first place. And the very, very end of the film, they don't have the village wench who just appears out of nowhere and just sort of flutters her eyelashes at Mowgli and draws him into the man village. He stays in the jungle at the end of this one. It's a very different ending because I guess the moral of the original one is that you can't change nature. Like, Mowgli always had respect for the animals and the jungle itself, but, you know, he's a man. A man has needs, a man has urges, and he couldn't chase his destiny, and eventually he just, you know, grows up in his own species. I know they did the god-awful, I was going to say straight-to-video. I think it did actually get a theatrical release. Disney did an animated sequel, The Jungle Book 2, which was terrible in every way. Where he went back to the jungle, but this one, sort of the final image of this is it freeze frames on Mowgli hanging out in a tree with Bagheera and Baloo, which is a very, very nice ending because the first ending to the animated one was very bittersweet. But yeah, so I guess that covers the gamut for spoilers, right? There's not a whole lot to talk about, I guess.
I think
We're
that's
coming
it.
up to like 40 minutes with this one.
Yeah.
But sort of brief recommendation, Tate, at the end, and then we'll round off on this one.
I cannot believe I'm saying this, but animated original is, I'd say, better story-wise. This one was very confusing, and tonally it was wrong. Pacing was wrong, but sadly I'm going to have to say the original animated film was better. Sure, this is going to be one that, if you like visual effects in films, you have to go see this film. That's just that's just a given. If you've seen the original, you may as well go see this. If not, I would say go see the original first.
Yeah, definitely. I will kind of agree with that. I'd recommend seeing this movie. I'd definitely recommend seeing it on a big screen as well. For the effects, just the scope of it and everything like that, I think it would be just visually a treat for the eyes. Probably everyone who's wanted to see it has already seen it at this point, because we are quite late with this particular review. But it was a curiosity thing for me. Like, I wanted to see what they did with it, so I think that's definitely going to be a draw, and I think it will get repeat viewings, because it's going to bring in the adults who grew up with the original, and it's going to get the kids in as well. But that being said, if you are a parent watching this at all, please show them the original animated one. It was the final Disney movie that Walt Disney himself presided over. I love it. Tate, I know you think it's very forgettable. I think it's earned its right as a classic in the Disney lineup. So watch the original Jungle Book and kind of go and see this one, I guess, too. So, yeah, that'll do it for our review on The Jungle Book. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this one. Let us know what you thought of the original. And are you looking forward to Disney's future live-action remakes? If so, comment below. We love having a conversation with you guys in the comments. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, we will have another surprise review up tomorrow, I guess. That one, we're not going to say what it is, but we're going to have that up on our channel, so take a look at that. I will have my reaction videos. I've got to get on one now, actually, for Jason Bourne. There's going to be loads more trailers probably this week, knowing me. And I guess this is as good a time as any to introduce our new show that we're going to be starting.
Yes.
So, Tate, if you want to talk a bit about Timestamp Zero.
Timestamp Zero. So if you remember our Man of Steel live stream, it's basically the same concept as that. We will be live streaming an event, we'll be watching a film, and we will be commenting all the way through the film. And the general idea of it was, you set your timestamp on the DVD to 0 and you watch it along with us, or you can watch it on playback on YouTube. It's going to be real fun to do. I mean, we all enjoyed the Man of Steel live stream. You can still vote for that, actually, on Straw Poll. I would have the results for you, but actually it's a tie at the moment. So the 5 different things you can vote for are Gattaca, Whiplash, Brooklyn, The Usual Suspects, or The Prestige. These are my choices. I chose these very specifically. I could have chosen other films, but I thought, you know what, those are films that we haven't really covered on the channel so far, other than Brooklyn. Go see Brooklyn, by the way. But those are different. Those are films that mean something to me, which we haven't really covered on the channel so far. So I thought, you know what, those are the good starts to go for this different thing. So we'll all be watching that all at the same time and going through it, analysing it, and you guys can watch along with us, comment on it and stuff like that. So it's just going to be really fun like that.
Yeah, and it's a very good selection of films. I've got my personal favourite of what I'd like for us to do. For
what did you actually vote for? Because I know that everyone on the podcast voted.
I'm very guilty at the minute. I actually haven't voted. I wanted to kind of see how the votes were playing out, but two of my favourites actually kind of neck and neck now. So if you are listening to this and you haven't voted, check out our Facebook and Twitter pages. I think the straw poll is up on our Facebook one, should be up on our Twitter one as well. Links to those are in the description. I believe we're scheduling them for the last Sunday of every month, and
yes,
I guess
we are.
For that one it's this week.
It will be this Sunday, yes.
So are we going ahead with that still?
I believe so, yeah.
Ahead with that one if we're all free. Yep. So look out for that. We'll have a live stream up for that. So this Sunday, the 24th, we'll have times and we'll post those to our Facebook and Twitter once we know our schedules and things like that. So yeah, that'll do it for our video. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and it's great to be back with these reviews. We'll see you for Timestamp Zero, and we'll see you next week for Captain America Civil War. Looking forward to that one. So until next time, thanks for watching.